Hello, friends. It's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy GM Prep. In this weekly show, I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday role-playing game. In this case, I am playing the 4-time Emmy Award-winning role-playing game Shadowdark RPG by Arcane Library, written by Kelsey Dion. I am in the setting of the Gloaming, which is the setting from Cursed Scroll 1, also available from Arcane Library. This week, I launched the Kickstarter for the City of Arches campaign sourcebook. The City of Arches is a high fantasy city sourcebook built for lazy DMs and GMs, a city that you can use in almost any fantasy role-playing game, including Shadowdark, but also any of the variants of 5e and any other high fantasy role-playing games. The City of Arches fits very well. It is a city that you can drop into any existing campaign world, whether it's your own homebrew world or whether you want to add it to any of the multitudes of fully published campaign worlds. It fits in there very well. And it is a city filled with adventure, intrigue in the city itself, and lots of fun dungeon delves and adventures to be had in, above, around, through, below the City of Arches. It is a fantastic city source book. I have been working on it for 2 years. Patrons of Sly Flourish have seen this thing grow from a small, 12-page PDF into the 160-page full-color source book that we are going to fund on Kickstarter. Please check out the Kickstarter. You can find a link in the show notes below. Check it out. You can get a 42-page free sample, a huge sample that shows the breadth of the kind of stuff you're going to get in this book, plus adventures that you can run at your table this very night. That's the City of Arches Kickstarter. You can find a link down in the show notes. This show, of course, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to the awesome Lazy GM community over on Discord. They get a bunch of tools, tips, tricks, adventures, and stuff to run for your fantasy role-playing games, and they help me put on shows like this. To the patrons of Sly Flourish, thank you so much for your outstanding support. Last week, our heroes. So we had a good question. I like to hang out a little bit on Twitch before I start recording. And I had an excellent question, which was about the 3 things. It was more like, how do you lean into the real life mechanics and the real time mechanics of Shadowdark? What's that like? And is that an extra burden on the DM? And by this, there are really 3 areas where I think that this exists. And those 3 areas of sort of the extra sort of timekeeping and management aspects are the torch timer, the round tracking, and always being an initiative. These are 3 kind of core concepts of Shadowdark that make Shadowdark sort of run smooth and fast and sort of bring it back down to the original sort of delving roots of old school D&D. And they're all kind of there to keep things moving forward, to make sure that people are getting enough spotlight, and to keep the threat of the game kind of always on. But these are 3 things that you have to manage at the table. But I have now 40 sessions worth of Shadowdark under my belt. I've run it a whole lot, and I've got good ways that I've managed this. One thing is, I screwed up sometimes, right? Or I screwed up maybe more than half the time. And it's okay. The game has been really smooth. So not hanging on too tightly to those things as like, oh, you absolutely have to do them or you're screwed. No, if a player jumps in ahead of time, it's not that big a deal. If you forget to track rounds for a little while, it's not that big a deal. And if the torch timer goes off, but you forgot to, it's not a big deal. You can get by on all of these things. And I have screwed them all up. I probably screw them up about half the time. But I do have 3 tricks that work really well. Trick number 1 is I set a torch timer on my phone, but I ask the players not to be tracking time on their side. It's far more interesting when they have to kind of remember to do it than it is. So I ask them, don't set your phone alarms, don't set your phone timers to track it so you know exactly how long the torch timer is. My other little dirty trick with that is I take a D12 and I roll a 12-sided die and I subtract that many minutes from the hour-long torch timer. So it's always not quite exactly an hour. It's somewhere between 48 minutes and an hour, roughly 48 to 59 minutes. And that way there's a fun little bit of variance, and they know I do that, and that makes it even harder for them to track it, even if they are kind of checking out the time. It's not exactly right. They don't know what I rolled on the D12. So that was one trick I had for kind of keeping the torch timer going and also giving it a little bit of variability for fun. Tracking rounds is not too bad. Actually, tracking rounds and tracking initiative, I do together. I think that it's pretty easy to do together. And what I do is I have a big dry erase mat in front of me when I'm playing. You could also use like a 3x5 index card or anything like that. And I write the names of the characters in the position that they are around the table. So that way the characters, I don't know about your Shadowdark game, but I've lost 17 characters. So me keeping track of character names connected to players is actually kind of hard when we've had whatever it is now, 23 different characters. So I write the character name in the position where the player is so that I can go around the table, but I have this little cheat sheet in front of me, almost like a seating chart, right? But the seating chart is with the characters. And I have a little token. You could use a miniature. You could use anything. A die would be fine. And I keep the die on whoever went last. And then I move the die around, or the token. In this case, I use one of my little 1-inch generic monster tokens that I have for my lazy token stuff. You can find a link to that. And I use my little token to just keep track of who went, and then I know to move it to the next person. And it helps me stay on track too, because if people start jumping in to do things, people get very excited and they jump in. We can do that, and then we can kind of come back and say, okay, oh yeah, that's right. We were last on, Mirinal. That wasn't Mirinal, but last on whoever. And then go back into initiative again. Now, tracking the current turn is useful, but then next to it, I will write the word rounds, and I will just have a little tick mark. And every time the initiative token goes around, I'll tick off another round. Now, sometimes I'll just forget for a little while, and then I'll just say, I don't have to keep track of the rounds every time, but I can start tracking them again. Or I can say, you know what, it's been long enough, it's time for a random encounter. Maybe let me roll to check for a random encounter. So that way I can keep track of turn order and rounds in a very quick to draw thing. If you're playing online, you can sort of do the same thing. You can just have like the list of the players or list of the characters on your card, and you can keep a little token going back and forth between those, so you can keep track of who did what last when you're playing online. And then you can still track rounds separately. And you can, even if you're playing online, you don't have to use an online tool to do that. You could have a physical thing in front of you, the 3x5 card with all that notes on it. So those are 3 tricks that I have for kind of doing the management of a Shadowdark game. It's worked really well for me. Number 1, don't get too hung up on it. Number 2, use your phone's timer. There's also apparently some really good Shadowdark torch timer, like online torch timers that you can use. I haven't used it because I play in person now, and I don't really use any other tools in front of me. But I'll use my phone to do 1 hour, and then I subtract 1d12, so there's a little bit of variance, and I ask my players not to keep track of the time themselves, so that they have to kind of remember to keep their torch going. And then I keep a seating chart with the characters' names so that I know the order, and then I use a little token to track turn tracking. And I will keep a little round indicator where I just put tick marks for the rounds as they're going by, and every 2 or 3 rounds, or however often the danger level is, I will roll for a random encounter to see what's going on. So those are my initial dirty tricks for kind of managing the paperwork part of a Shadowdark game, the parts of the Shadowdark game that are kind of unique to Shadowdark. So yes, Shadowdark won. They really cleaned up. Kelsey cleaned up at the Ennies this year. She won 4 different Ennies for best game, best layout, product of the year, and best layout. So she got, did I say layout twice? Rules, layout, best game, and product of the year, I think, were the 4 gold Ennies that Shadowdark won. So it really cleaned up at the Ennies, and I think it's extremely well-deserved. Shadowdark is such a fantastic role-playing game, and it's such a fantastic part of the hobby, right? It's got a really big community around it. It's lots of fun to play. I've been running tons of it and like it. I really, really dig it. It is not for everybody. The sort of grim, dark nature of Shadowdark is certainly a big tonal shift from more sort of character-focused storytelling games like your Dungeon World-y sort of games or your Apocalypse World sort of games, and a big shift from your more mechanics-heavy games like Pathfinder 2, D&D 5th Edition, and so on. So what's nice about that, though, is we have such a wide range of different kinds of games, and I think Shadowdark hits this perfect nail. I think it's a fantastic game to teach people how to play role-playing games and how to play D&D. I think even as a precursor to D&D, it works really well, because all the mechanics for Shadowdark are basically simplified 5e mechanics, and then you can start people learning on that and then move into 5e if you want to get into the bigger, crunchy, or more heroic, more character-focused sort of games from 5th edition stuff. So it is both a excellent game on its own that now, and lots of people are like, oh, is it too simple to run as a campaign? Obviously not. I've been running a 40 session campaign. My players love it. I think it's one of the few RPGs besides 5e that we've played where the players are like, I would totally just play this again. Like when we're done with this campaign, I'd totally play another one. And maybe we will. I don't think we're going to play one right after this, but I would be surprised if we didn't come back to it. I'm really looking forward to Curse Scroll 4, 5, and 6. I would love to see those come out and then see what kind of worlds we can build from those. So that looks like it'll be really fun. Last session, the characters met Mirinal. Mirinal is so they fought some twin alien assassins. What did they do? They killed one of them right away. They stabbed the assassin with a discordant blade and destroyed them right away. But the other assassin zipped around. I think the assassin stabbed some people which was hard. And then they killed that assassin as well. So they saw these weird alien assassins that had come through this portal. They really wanted to close the portal. And I think I just defaulted back to like a 5e kind of, almost like a 4e kind of skill challenge of attempting multiple intelligence checks and pouring spells into it to kind of close the rift. And they seemed fine with that. Like, I don't think anybody was like, that's not how this is supposed to be. That's one trick that I've had with Shadowdark. I've lots of tricks with lots of RPGs. What to do with things like how do you close an open rift is not super clear to me. Like, what is the approach that you would have? And the default is like just roll ability checks or use spells or things like that. But Shadowdark is really supposed to be about like, coming up with an in-world way to do something, but it's hard to do an in-world way when you have things like a violent rift to another world. Like what items do they have that they could use? And then some of the answer could be like, you don't think you're going to be able to close it. The best you could do is seal off this room. So that's kind of one of the tricky bits. But yeah, they had this, and I think they ended up closing off the rift to this other alien world where these alien assassins had come from. That happened after one of the characters leaped forward and stabbed a giant alien stone with the obsidian witch knife, and then so blew themselves up and tore open this rift to this other alien world. Vordoon was the name of the world, swirling violet sky with big shapes. So they did that. Then they crawled some more, recovered some secrets, and then met Miranal. And I had this really fun, I made a nice Dwarven Forge set. I reused a Dwarven Forge setup that I had used for another game. And they were like, oh, look at this. I was like, yeah, like it's actually from my other game, but it works here too. Nice beautiful 2-level sort of thing. And they met Miranal. I had a cool miniature of, what's her name? The demon, the fallen angel who's the ruler of Avernus and was the main villain in Descent into Avernus. I forget her name. Yeah, too many names in my head. And so I had a nice miniature for her. She looked really cool. I gave her the big Warhammer because the miniature had Zariel. Thank you, everybody. Zariel is the name of that fallen angel. So I have a cool Zariel miniature. And I had her, and she was like very confused about why she was still around. She had been betrayed by her sister unknowingly. Her sister believed that it was the best thing to do to kind of like push away this battle between demons and devils and all that kind of stuff. And the characters are kind of interested in all of that. One of the characters is like a Saint Taragnis follower. So the idea of like maybe Saint Taragnis isn't the saint after all was kind of a question. And I'm kind of left them with that. And so they negotiated with her, and Miranal's like, I don't know whether to crush you under my giant hammer or fight alongside you in order to defeat, whatever evils are of this world. And they talked a good game to her. I don't remember exactly what argument they made to her, but they finally made an argument. She said, I'll tell you what. And she recharged one of the characters. So Uralt of St. Yidris is wearing a suit of St. Taragnis armor, the armor of St. Taragnis, and it would allow him to summon an archangel. He used that in a big fight a while back and saved the day with it. They were all like dropping like flies, and he's like, I think I'm going to need to use this. So that used it up, and I told him, like, if you use it, you're not going to get it back. Like, I know like that they had like a 2-week limit or something like that in the book, but I was like, you know what? I think we're just going to say you can only use it once. And then she recharges. So now he's got another charge of that in his belt, which is good because I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at him. I think they're probably going to end up using that. So she ended up saying, yeah, I'll fight alongside you to help save this world, even though I was betrayed. And then they went to the big lift, and they used the lift, and they got up to the upper temple. So they're now back on the surface in the temple of St. Taragnis in an area where they are expecting this is up, I think, in this big pit here called the Mud Pit. Let's take a look at locations. The Mud Pit. I think this is where the dragon is. Yeah. Muddy ravine as big as a galleon gapes in the wet earth. Deep within, the swamp dragon Ixaden slithers in the dark morass and devours the living sacrifices his cultists hurl inside. Ixaden has grown large and arrogant, and if not fed for a day, he bursts angrily from the pit to gulp down the nearest creatures. Inside the dragon's belly are 1,200 gold, a giant ruby, a suit of mithril chainmail, and a wand of moonbeam that any spellcaster can wield. I think for fun, so I want to take a look at the map that we have for this section. So here's the map that I am going to use for this. They just got up to the Forgotten Temple, and there's secret passages. I think they found the secret passage and entered into the Shrine of Taragnis, where there's like a shattered statue of Taragnis. And it would kind of be fun if they spoke to Taragnis. This might be a fun, strong start. So let's create a new session planning template. And we will look at our characters. I love, man, these characters. Morgan's dead. Bram Apples is dead. Squee is the new one. I think this is right. Irina, Geralt, Dazder, Calum, Squee are the characters that we're going to have today. We have one player out. And the strong start is going to be the shattered statue of Saint Taragnis. And I think it's a lot more hard caliber. And basically it's like you must fight to the very end against both Mugdalblub and Almazat to save the people of this world. Titania is a coward who would abandon her own old lands. Sacrifices must be made. So I think that kind of is fun. I'm thinking of the scene where they see Athena in Clash of the Titans, where the statue's head comes off and it like opens up and it, how dare you say she's more beautiful than I in my own temple. So I think the Saint Taragnis is going to be a lot more hard caliber than Mirinal was. And they'll probably have some questions for her about Mirinal. And she'll say, like, I did the one thing no one else would do. I killed my own sister. I murdered my own sister for the betterment of the world. So her sacrifice, she did not sacrifice anything at all. She just simply died. I, on the other hand, sacrificed everything by murdering my own sister to do this, which is kind of a twisted way to look at it, but I think it's kind of fun. Kind of fun old gods. I want to go back to my other session notes here and just see if there's any secrets and clues. I think, let's see, Mirinal and Taragnis, yes, in order to fight back, dragon, blah, blah, keeping demons out, blah, dark touch of demonkind, and the gloaming is forever curse the land. I like that one. From Taragnis, the only way to beat that's a good one. Mirinal never agreed. So I think some of these we're going to keep. But I don't think all of these are going to be particularly useful secrets. Speaking to the statue of Saint is a secret. Navigating the ruined temple of Taragnis. The Varro's Bane returns. The journey to Haldren's Tower. Recovery of the Well of Worlds. Journey to Bittermold Keep. Mugdalblub. Finn. I think this is the outline for the rest of the campaign, I'm pretty sure. We're going to narrow things down. We're getting to the pointy end of the yam-shaped adventure. And the pointy end of the yam-shaped adventure is heading in this direction, I think. Dark touched of demon kind of gloaming is forever cursed the land, making the grim target of Mugdalblub, Almazats, and others. From St. Taragnis, it was the only way to beat back the forces. It was the only solution. It required the sacrifice of one of the two twins. We can get rid of this one. St. Taragnis believes the true sacrifice is sacrificing her own sister. Mirinal wants to return to divinity. She wants everybody to know the history. Dark and desperate fey creatures seek artifacts in the temple of St. Taragnis. That would be kind of fun. Let's see. War between the forces of Almazat and the forces of Mugdalblub battle one another. The sky has become membranous with weird eyes and mouths, forcing back the jaws of Almazat. That's actually a separate secret. So like Mugdalblub could still win, right? Mugdalblub could fight back Almazat. These names are terrible. Undaluk has returned to the surface, but isn't bitter, isn't sore about being tricked by the characters. Horrors of other worlds lurk the lands. The remaining people of the Gloaming hide from these warring otherworldly horrors. Haldren is losing his touch with humanity now that he is a lich. Why bother? So Varro's Bane, the ooze dragon, slew and devoured Ixodin, the dragon of the mud pit, in which lies the ruins of the temple of Saint Taragnis. This lair is now his. This is pretty good. I hammered out those secrets really quick, but I've got it. So fantastic locations. We have ruined temple of Saint Taragnis. We have the mud pit. We're going to call it the Ixodin's lair. Ixodin's lair, and then Haldren's Tower is the next location, and then the other location will be Bittermold Keep. And those are really the big locations that remain for this campaign. NPCs, I think I had in my last notes, Jin Icam, a priestess of Saint Taragnis and caretaker of the temple. I think we probably want to have some fae folk, because my idea is that there are fae folk who are trying to like find artifacts in this temple. Solara is pretty good. Rosalind Solara, a half-elf explorer leading a group of fae folk known as and I think there's an adventuring party list here. Let's scroll, wrong one. Rival crawlers. I need a D20. Oh, I got a big D20. 1, the savage wardens. Sure. And they are known for, I rolled a pair of 1s. They are known for 8, their signature clothing. Oops, that's the wrong notes. I put all this in the wrong stuff. In this one. There was a funny documentary about John Adams. It was not a documentary. It was like a HBO special about John Adams. And they met Ben Franklin. And he went to France and he met Ben Franklin. And Ben Franklin is dressed in this great big fur coat with this great big fur hat. And he's like, what the hell are you wearing? And he's like, this is the kind of thing that they expect of Americans here in France. And I think it would be fun if the Savage Wardens were actually just like kind of normal folk, but they're wearing like things that they've made up to look like humanoid skins and like faces hanging off of them and skulls and other stuff. And it's because they want to like appear like the savage brutes of the Feywild come here to eat your children. And really they're like, no, we don't eat children. Like that's crazy. We just dress up because people expect that of us. So the idea of like a group of rival crawlers in this ruin would be lots of fun. So those are some good NPCs. Monsters, I think we're going to just, like keep rolling randomly. Like this is the Shadowdark way, I think. You don't have to like prepare all of your, encounters per room and stuff like that, or build your own random tables. We have random tables. And for this one, we have a ruins. We have a tomb. We have both a ruins and a tomb. Right? So I can roll on my lists as I want for both ruins, and I guess this would be mostly, there's like Temple District. That's kind of fun. A man leaps up. I object during a wedding. That's fun. So I can just kind of roll on these lists and find different encounters as we go. And with the idea of like, okay, well, what's the theme that's going on in here? Well, the main theme is that like the temple had been left alone because the dragon was dead, but the dragon's dead because it was killed by another worse dragon. And that monster I definitely want to look up, which would be, I think it's a green dragon. Let's look at our monsters here. There are, so before the show, I was actually looking through the list of monsters, and it's like, as I come closing in on the end of the adventure, what monsters do I want to use that I haven't used yet? Where I look, it's like, now's the chance. So I think I used a forest dragon was thing, and he has a poison breath. We have a smog breath. So they're all this, let's see. I guess the sea dragon is more powerful, or the fire dragon. The fire dragon's pretty brutal. CR 17 for that one. The swamp dragon, smog breath, fills a near-sized cube, 2d10 damage and blinded. That's pretty good. Smog breath. 3 rend attacks are pretty good. I think we can use the forest dragon has poison breath. So I think we'll stick with that. Swamp dragon's on page 211. So if we have a monster, I'll just keep a little note of where I can find that. Page 211, the swamp dragon. That's a monster I'd like to use. Some other monsters. I saw some other monsters I hadn't seen before. And I was like, oh, I want to use those. Outsiders. Alien horrors from frozen outer reaches of the cosmos. Like, who doesn't want this, right? This sounds good. So the primordial slime looks like a perfect Mugdalblub creature. And that's page 241. The Rime Walker. I don't think I need a Rime Walker. Although the Rime Walker would actually make a very cool, like one of the, what did I call them? The Knights of Mugdalblub. Void Spawn is another tentacled horror. Tooth scythe attack. Scythe-like limbs jut from a purple bulb as big as an ogre. Lower half is a nest of tentacles. Like, that's awesome. Tooth scythes and tentacles. The Void Spawn on page 241. would make a good Almazot's sort of creature, crystalline, weird, and void spider, pale horse size arachnids that become ghostly and intangible. This is more like your typical phase spider. Yeah, it's a phase spider, so I'm going to ignore that one. But then there's also critters in the monster section of the Gloaming of Cursed Scroll 1. So let's take a look at these and see if there's any kind of fun ones in here. The Dralic I've talked about, Howler, Mugdleblub, of course. We'll put Mugdleblub in the list. I don't really need it, but page 47. And so the Marrow Fiend. I think Marrow Fiends are starting to wander around, and they are page 47. Any other critters? I never brought up the Willow Man. Plagora B. That's an interesting. Plogrina. That's a weird one. So that gives me a good pile of critters that are running around. The other one I wanted to pull back were the Knights of Mugdleblub. There are 4 of these guys, and they're wandering about. I should really put page numbers next to these guys. The Reaver is page 247. Ashara the Mage. I'm overdoing it. I don't need to go through all this work. But now I've started, and now I can't stop. 231. The Fire Giant Garavada Vol. They fought him before, and he kicked their asses, and they ran. Which is understandable. He's really bad. Where are giants? He hit this one. The 3 attacks for 2d12 damage was just brutal. 218. I got to paste these back into my other one. Wind Whisper, the Assassin. I'm putting these page numbers down because I'm probably going to use these later. 197. Clovilla of Set, the Druid. I like the idea of a Slime Druid. 213. And another creature we have is Haldren, the Lich. I don't know if they're going to fight him or not, but why not have a stat block handy? Liches are cool. 230. I'm going to just paste this list back in my Knights of Mugdleblub section in case I go back to them again. There, got that. So I got a big pile of monsters. Treasure we're going to roll up, but I definitely want to add some scrolls. I don't think I need to list it here. But we've got so many mages and stuff like that I definitely want to have a bunch of spells and stuff like that. The Hidden Library, I think, is going to have a lot of cool shit like that. And what else do I need? I've got my map. I've got plans. Plans within plans. What else do I need? Not much. Like all of the lazy GM prep, you should prep as much as you need to feel comfortable running your game. That's kind of my general rules. How do I feel? And if I feel like I'm ready, then I probably don't need to keep prepping. And I feel like I'm ready. I got my pile of secrets and clues. I know the general direction that the game is going to go. I've got locations. I don't need a map of some of this stuff. Aldrin's Tower, eventually I'll need a map, but I don't need to work on that right now. I got a couple of interesting NPCs and Fae folk. I've got monsters that they can face. I've got the Knights of Mugdleblub. So I am pretty well set. So I think that's it for today's Lazy RPG Prep. Friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today while I prepped for my game. If you enjoyed this show and you like the work that I do, the best thing you can do is look at the City of Arches Kickstarter, which is live now on Kickstarter. There's a link in the show notes below. You get a free 42-page sample of the City of Arches Kickstarter high fantasy city sourcebook designed for lazy DMs to be dropped into any campaign of your choice. Really, really fun, really, really cool product. I think you're going to absolutely love it. And tell your friends about it. Share it with your GMs, share it with your other friends, share it on social media, tell everybody about it. I figured this out. And if you told 2 people, and those 2 people told 2 others, and that kept going on, and they never mentioned it to somebody who didn't know, everybody on the planet would know about this Kickstarter in 30 steps or something like that. But I don't know, that doesn't seem very likely to happen. But still, tell your friends. It's really good. You can also subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. The newsletter is an excellent newsletter. You get a weekly RPG-related email sent to your inbox every week and a free adventure generator PDF for signing up. You can also support me directly on Patreon and get access to all kinds of tools, tips, and tricks to run your own games, exclusive adventures that you can pick up there, other things that I'm working on from time to time. And you get to join the Lazy DMs community, and you help me support you support the work that I do here. And you can pick up any of my other books on the Sly Flourish bookstore, which are all available in the links below, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, which has these 8 steps that I go through and talks about how to use them in order to prep your games. All of those are in the show notes. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.